Hey guys, welcome to my Slice Info. PLO Lumumba remains a very powerful contender in the struggle for the liberation of Africa. Through his powerful speeches, we can see his thoughts and feelings and ideas and perspectives on African problems and how to solve them. In this video, we're going to look at a series of clips where he makes some really powerful points about the freedom of Africa and how to achieve that. We're going to look at 8 points that he mentions in this video. Without much ado, let's get right to it. Watch.
One, we need leaders with ideas.
That the problem with Africa is that those who have ideas have no power and those with power have no ideas. And that in many ways still informs. So you have all these ideas on how we can green Africa. I listen to you and I can see you are bubbling with ideas, but you don't have the power. And the fellow with power has completely no idea. And yet somehow, and this I think is your problem, when the electorate is given the choice between you with ideas and the one without ideas, the Africans' affinity for people without ideas is amazing. It's amazing.
Two, we need leaders who are not demigods.
The reason why we talk about rotation is that we have put too much premium on the presidency. The presidency, and I think it is Chinua Achebe who wrote about in his little book in 1983, The Trouble with Nigeria, which could very well be with the trouble with Africa. That a president is like a person who holds the knife and the young. Depending on how you behave, they can give you a little slice and you celebrate them. Your typical African president is a demigod. And because they are demigods, and the reason why they become demigods is that we ourselves treat our presidents as if they were gods. Then they get used to being treated as gods and they don't know how to behave because you have made them gods. But if we created an environment where the presidency was about service delivery, people would not even want to stay in the presidency for a long time. Because as Julius Kambarage Nyerere once said, and I agree with him, you are not successful until and unless your successor succeeds. That is what is important.
3, corruption should be a crime against humanity.
And I think that this, sometimes you've got to raise things to the level of the absurd. Because what does corruption do to a country? Look at the thieving ways of Mobutu Sese Seko in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo has never recovered from the thieving of Mobutu and his acolytes. How many people did not have medicine in hospitals, including a hospital named after his own mother, Mama Yemo in Kinshasa? How many died? Perhaps more than in the Holocaust. How many people have died in the Cameroons in the 30 years that Paul Biya has been the president through corruption, and all that money is tucked away in Paris in France? How many people die in our roads because of potholes, because some government official took away money that ought to have been used to make good roads? So this is a crime against humanity, for which punishment should be the ultimate punishment. And in China, they do exactly that. They come to this part of the world, they corrupt our leaders, but if you are corrupt in China, they'll deal with you firmly, swiftly, and take away your life, so that you are no longer a danger to society. I believe that corruption should be a crime against humanity, because the impact of corruption in Africa in many areas, how many people are maimed because we imported polio vaccination that were not potent, so that somebody could buy a mansion in Florida or some other island in the United States of America or in the Caribbean. How many How many of the roads here in Nigeria, how many have been involved in defense contract corruption so that we have in a situation where we cannot have things that we ought to deserve? I mean, it has been more pernicious than any other thing. Corruption has killed more people than the civil wars combined in Africa. And yet we treat it with velvet gloves. We glamorize these individuals. We continue to elect them in office. They bribe us with 500 naira, 500 CDs, 20 kwanza, and we continue to elect them. And then they claim democracy. Look recently during the UN General Assembly in New York, what and how African leaders behaved. They stayed in the most expensive hotels, the world of Astoria, except the Tanzanian delegation. And yet, in their homes, people don't have potable water to drink. Yet, in their homes, there is no medicine in hospitals. You know, sometimes in an interview setting such as this, we appear to be intellectualizing about it, to be philosophizing about it. But if we walked out 2 kilometers away from here within Lagos, there are real things. There could be testimony of a woman who delivered on the roadside because there was no health facility. There are real issues in Africa, very real. Perhaps sometimes we should take these interviews there so that they are testimonies.
Great.
4. The role of young people.
Many of us who are not in positions of influence, our younger generation particularly, think that this does not matter. This matters. If you look at the history of revolutions, it was always the young people. As early as 1908 in Turkey, it is the young people who came up to rise up against the dictatorial regime. We remember even during the Bolshevik Revolution, it was the young people. We remember during the civil rights movement led by Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy, among others, it was young people. In 1968 in France, when there was a problem, initially in 1958 and 1968, it was young people. We remember in Tiananmen Square, it was young people. We remember in Korea in 1908, it was the young people. In South Africa, in the Sharpeville massacre in 1969, it was the young people. In Soweto in 1976, it was the young people. In the Arab world, it's the young people. But our young people in Africa today are imprisoned by Arsenal and Manchester United and Barcelona and Real Madrid, and our young girls are imprisoned by cheap South American soap operas and Beyonce and all. How can that be? How can a continent be so accursed that our young people have no sense of our history, no sense of our presence, no sense of our future? No wonder the Chinese are conquering us by the day. And we are wondering. John F. Kennedy said in 1960, a society whose young men and women are in a constant state of slumber will never realize our potential. Our young people must wake up. It is only the day that they wake up that they will be able to send a clear message to those in positions of leadership that you cannot continue to misgovern us. I look forward to those days.
5. Conflict resolution via negotiations.
That even as we think about Agenda 2063, we must break it into compartments. And in his view, we must spend 10 years, and now even disagree with him. We must spend 5 years resolving the African disputes, because as long as we have disputes and live wars, it will undermine our affairs. And that is why I said at the memorial that we must even consider calling all these rebel groups at a meeting and asking them, what do you want? What do you want? Tell us what you want. Are you rebels with a cause or rebels without a cause? Let us call Boko Haram. Let us call all these fringe bodies that are active in different countries Al-Shabaab, and ask them the fundamental primary question: what do you want? Tell us. Once we know what you want, then we can move in the next direction of resolving it for the best interests of all the countries of Africa. These are hard choices, but history has demonstrated that that is the way to be done. As a high school student, I remember we used to hear about an urban guerrilla movement in West Germany called the Red Brigades. They resolved the problem through negotiation. The Irish Republican Army in the United Kingdom, through negotiation. The Basque rebellion in Spain, through negotiation. The Sandinistas, Sendero Luminoso in Latin America, through negotiations. That is what we must do. We can no longer afford the luxury of saying that there are certain things that are not negotiable. My own view is that everything must be negotiated in order to preserve our nation. Otherwise, we'll be in a constant state of conflict, and conflicts acquire a life of their own until the combatants forget what it is that they are fighting about. They're just engaged in combat.
6. The electorate must respond to ideas and not money.
One question people ask about strong advocates like yourself is this: why don't you run for office to give life to your ideals? Why is Professor Lumumba?
That is the question that I was asked.
Okay.
No, I ran in 2007 for a parliamentary seat, and I said before I ran, I was asked the same question. And I ran one of the most efficient campaigns, in my view. I held within a constituency 250 meetings, town hall meetings, where I was interrogating the people. I gave nobody a single cent. My friends raised for me 3 million shillings. I spent 1.5, donated the balance to charity. But I told the people that the electorate does not respond to ideas. The person who won in the constituency where I was never campaigned, but the night before he was distributing money to everybody. What stimulates the African electorate is instant solutions. The 500 naira that he or she is going to use to buy gari or to buy maize meal in my country. That is the problem. African electorate on average does not respond to ideas. That is what we must do. The African electorate, once we have re-engineered our governance, must ask themselves, what do they want? And you've seen consistently in almost in every other country in Africa, those who acquired power through the ballot are not our best men and women. They are our most corrupt men and women, invariably. Even the leaders we now praise initially could never have been elected. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni in Uganda, when he contested in 1980s, failed. He came back through a guerrilla movement, succeeded. Now the Ugandans saw this man is good. Paul Kagame rescued the Rwandese. Now they think and know he's good. Meles Zenawi in Ethiopia. The African electorate must liberate themselves. Wole Soyinka, who is in Nigerian, how many times has he tried to run for office? Did he not run for the presidency? At one time here in Nigeria, did the Nigerians elect him? The anti-corruption crusader Nuhu Ribadu, did he not run for office? Did the Nigerians elect him? Jean Ping in Gabon, he ran for election. Did they elect him? Africans don't elect men and women who wish them well.
7. good leadership through self-esteem or discovery.
I listened to the Chinese president speaking in eloquent Mandarin, saying how the relationship between Africa and China is a mutually beneficial relationship. He spoke about Africa as if it was one country. He did not remind himself, in my mind, that there are 55 countries in Africa, or 54 if you ask Morocco. And I listened to the Chinese president specifically mentioning the Gambia and a few words on Sao Tome and Principe, that they were welcomed back to the world because they had renounced their relationship with Taiwan and they had now recognized the one China policy. Do I say this because there is anything wrong with China? No. I'm saying this because the Chinese are providing leadership for their people. They know exactly what they want for their people, and they are doing exactly what they want for their people for the benefit of their people. The question that I'm posing to us, do we know what we want for our people? Are we doing what we need for our people? And the answer is, I doubt. Why do I doubt? I doubt because at the end of the entire enterprise, the Chinese president said that he had given, or his government had given, 60 billion United States dollars to 54 African countries. Notionally, therefore, each country would be entitled to no more than 1.5 billion. Half of the presidents who are present in China, each one of them, half of them, can produce 1.5 billion. Sportsmen in Europe and America, including boxers, can earn $1 billion in a single bout. And we are here celebrating and singing the praises of China because they gave us 60 billion. Once again, it is a statement of their ability to recognize what leadership is all about. I'm submitting to us that when we interact with people like the Chinese, there is something to learn from them. We may condemn them at forums such as this, but there is wisdom in asking ourselves, how is it that this country, which about 30 years ago could not feed half our population, has in 30 years during our lifetime succeeded in pulling up nearly 800 million people out of poverty? How is it that every road that is now being built in Africa, whether the road is in Benin or in Nairobi, Kenya, or in Johannesburg, South Africa, or in Kigali in Rwanda, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, there is a Chinese firm whose name I cannot pronounce as the contractor for that firm? How is it? How is it that China, which about 30 years ago did not produce a mobile phone, today out of every 10 mobile phones, we are using 6 which are from China? If it is not Techno, it is some other phone. If we are not inviting Jack Ma, we are inviting another Chinese, because we have seen that they have the ability to organize their affairs. Some of us, particularly those of us who are in the middle class, our pride is that our child is learning Mandarin as a second language, not isiZulu, Mandarin. I fear, Bishop, that in the next few years, when they bring their children for baptism, and you ask them, how do you name this child? They'll saying Deng Xiaoping Simfiu. I'm still talking about leadership. We have seen what leadership can do. Leadership has catapulted China to another completely different orbit. We have seen that leadership has catapulted South Korea to a different orbit. We have seen that leadership has catapulted Vietnam, which was bombed to the ground in 1975. Vietnam now produces more coffee than all African countries combined. What have they done? The men and women who have been given the opportunity to serve those countries long recognize that leadership is about service. And I can't agree more with the Honorable Minister who spoke before me and the good Dr. Aaron who spoke before me that the true essence of leadership is self-discovery and self-esteem. You know, where I come from in my tribe, and I know in many African communities, when you do something very well, they say, you have done it like a white man. When you arrive on time, they say, he has arrived like a white man. When you speak well, they say, you spoke like a white man. When you dress well, you dress like a white man. When you go to a beautiful place in Africa, you say, it does not look like Africa, as if Africans are incapable of doing the right things. And I'm telling us that until the day that we exercise the ghost of low self-esteem, Africa is going nowhere. I'm submitting to us that history has demonstrated times without number that personal conquest is the beginning of true leadership. If you don't conquer yourself, you are going nowhere. And I'm submitting to us that Africa must now recognize that whatever institutions you have, until and unless it is populated by men and women who have ideals, those institutions will collapse, never to be put together again. So going forward, ladies and gentlemen, I hold the view that a conference such as this, that brings together men and women who recognize that Africa should occupy her pride of place amongst the Committee of Nations, must be a conference at which we speak to each other honestly. I think we Africans have been too kind to each other for too long. The time has come that we must annoy each other. It is only when we have annoyed you sufficiently that we can canalize that anger, and that anger can then be used to move mountains. And my joy is that Africa is not sleeping. My joy is that Africans are now beginning to wake up to the reality that we have not only the intellectual wherewithal, but that we have the resources to make our countries grow and grow in the proper direction. You know, not so long ago, and not so long ago in this case means about 50 years ago, I read and listened to the leaders of the early days. If you listen to any one of those leaders, the clarity with which they were able to identify the problems of Africa and the clarity with which they were able to prescribe the medicine that could solve the problems of Africa was as titillating as it was as astounding. You know, I listen to the more casual works and I read the casual works of a young leader in the 1980s, such as Thomas Sankara. You know, Thomas Sankara is a young individual whose claim to formal education was not very much. He did not hold any PhD. He was an army officer. He overthrows the government of Upper Volta, and he goes into government and poses the question, why are we called Upper Volta? And he says the first thing that we must do is to change the name of this country so that it becomes Burkina Faso, the land of the upright man, and that the people of this country must be called the Burkinabe, the upright people. And he says we have been suffering with hunger and food shortages for too long. We have depended on France for too long. We can no longer be children and toddlers in our adulthood. We cannot be in economic and political diapers for too long. And he begins to release the country. And no sooner has he succeeded in doing this than the erstwhile colonial power says that this is a bad example. And they eliminate him. And not only Thomas Sankara. I remember the man for whom I am named in 1961, Patrice Emery Lumumba, only aged 36, and he recognizes, and on that day of independence, not being scheduled to speak, he speaks nevertheless, and he says how happy he is that the history of the Congolese will be written by the Congolese, and they take him away. I listened to Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah saying that Africa cannot be free unless the whole of it is free. I look at the casual works of Bantu Stephen Biko. I listen to the casual works of Samora Moises Machel. I read the casual works of Modibo Keita in Mali. I look at the works of Agostino Neto, the works of Africans who are clear. And those of you who are alive, then you could see that the indices of development in Africa were moving up north. If it was not infant mortality that was beginning to be lowered, it was maternal mortality and crude death rates. Africa was moving. But remember that Charles Darwin is still right. In this jungle that we call the world is survival of the fittest and the dying of the least suitable. When we begin to rise as a people, there are those whose only claim to success is to put us down, to tell us, not in so many words, that we are children of a lesser God. It is our duty to tell them that we are not. And that is why we have forums such as this. You know, there are those who may say, and I'm one of them, that perhaps in Africa we hold too many seminars, that we hold too many conferences, that we hold too many colloquia. But I hold the view that these things must be repeated time and time again, so that if they are clear, they become even clearer. Is it not true that gold must be in the fire and the furnace before it is refined? Is it not true that Africa has men and women, the 1.2 billion of us, that we have the ability to catapult this continent to a higher level? You know, there was a time that Africa deluded herself, that a leader was one in the nature of Moses, communing directly with God, and that this leader had a rod and staff, and that he would part the Red Sea of disease, and disease would disappear by pronouncement of abracadabra. That this leader would call and summon manna from heaven.
8. The power of African unity.
You know, as I talk about African unity, China refuses to get out of my mind. And I hope I'm wrong. But the Chinese know that we are disunited. And they know that in our disunited state we can be manipulated. And they are in the process of manipulating us. So today, there is not a single African country in which the Chinese have not built a stadium. They think we love stadia. There is not a single African country in which they are not building some roads. The Chinese are capable of delivering 3 types of qualities of the things they do. Quality number 1, they take to the United States of America and Europe. Quality number 2, they take to their fellow Asian countries, including India. Quality number 3, which is at the very bottom, they dump in Africa, and the Africans consume them gleefully. And it's because of our disunity, we are incapable of speaking with one voice. You know, many times when I look at Ghana, the Ghanaian president, whom I respect, is invited to Beijing to negotiate with Beijing, as indeed the Kenyan president would be, and the Burundi president, to negotiate with Beijing on a bilateral basis. And when they invite African leaders, they humor them, complete with guards of honor and 21 gun salutes, so that they think that they are equal. But the Ghanaian economy's GDP is possibly 1/3 of the GDP of the city of Beijing. The Burundian economy is only $2 billion United States dollars, which is the same amount that an American professional boxer earns in 1 year. The economy of Benin is smaller than Coca-Cola's advertising budget for 1 year. In other words, African economies are Mickey Mouse economies which cannot compete. And because we are disunited, we are incapable of moving as one unit. The European Union wants to have what they call bilateral negotiations with Benin. The European Union's combined economy, perhaps the largest market in the world today, is something in the neighborhood of 14 trillion United States dollars if you combine the European Union economy, and you have bilateral negotiations with Benin. That is smaller than the turnover of Standard Chartered Bank. In other words, the president of Standard Chartered Bank could very well be the one negotiating with the president of Benin, if we were to be realistic. But that is because we are disunited. And I'm submitting to us that the only antidote to that is our unity. I know, as I said yesterday, that there are already efforts to move Africa in the direction of unity at the economic front, but the suspicions in Africa are too great. The African politician is perhaps, with due respect to them, Africa's curse.
Thank you for watching, guys. I hope it was helpful and you learned something from it. And share these videos with your friends and family and the public in order to pass the message to the rest of Africa about what we can do in order to achieve freedom, because freedom is not something one person can achieve. It will take the whole of Africa, both the youths and the old, in order to achieve what we're fighting for. See you in my next video. Bye bye.